you don't need another recipe, or you don't need to save another recipe, because chances are you have a whole folder, collection somewhere of recipes that have been saved that you have not gone back to. Or, put differently, that you saved the intention of, say, maybe eating better or cooking more food at home, and you have yet to do that, or you're not doing it any better. So this is me saying, you do not need more recipes if what you're trying to do is eat better. And by the time I'm done with this video, you will more or less understand why the recipes or saving them is not a thing that's going to get you to actually make more meals if you're trying to eat better. Because again, I ask the question, if you have all of these saved recipes or cookbooks or Pinterest saves of recipes, why are you still struggling to eat better or cook more at home? Why? Make that make sense. So I'm going to share with you now what you need, or what would be better for you or more helpful for you. And the first thing I want to state is that recipes are valuable. This is not me knocking on recipes. I love me a good recipe. In fact, I used a recipe from one of my favorite bloggers to make a pizza crust last night, and I absolutely loved it. And what I love recipes for are what they teach you, because you learn new techniques. For example, you get flavor ideas. Recipes are inspiration, as exhibited by all the ones you may have watched or seen and say, oh, this looks good, this looks like a good idea, let me save it. So recipes are in fact very valuable. So I'm not against them. So what recipes solve a specific problem, which is, how do I make something? Right? It answers that question of how. And that's not a bad thing. But that is where recipes kind of fall short or stop, because what recipes don't answer is, what do I do with what I have? Or recipes, what fits what I have? Or what is realistic for my time, my capacity, again, resources. So that is where I find recipes fall short, or that is how I think they fall short for people who are trying to eat better. And again, I'm saying eat better because that can mean different things for different people. But I want you to understand how relying on recipes is not getting you closer to that goal. And then the third thing about recipes is that they don't exactly replace the decision making that you have to do. So this is why I say recipes fall short as far as they don't answer what fits or what's realistic, because recipes answer the question of how. I shared in previous video that groceries answer the question of, do I have food? Let me solve that problem. And recipes more or less don't help you close that gap. And that gap meaning going from the ingredients that you have to meals made. Recipes don't necessarily solve that problem, or they don't help you make a decision. Sometimes they do, let me be honest, but that's coming with an awareness of exactly what you want already. So you still have to make the decision. So recipes in and of themselves don't replace your decision making. You know what helps with that decision making? Looking at what you do have and working with it. Recipes are a tool that will help you take what you have into meals that will help you eat better. And so meal building is what I'm getting at, is the thing that is going to help you along that goal of eating better, or maybe it's nourishing yourself more, because again, two different people can have different definitions of eat better. So what is this meal building? If you watch my previous videos, you would have had an understanding, but for the purposes of this one, meal building is taking what you have and creating a more or less balanced meal, whether you want to use it in a bowl or not. And you do that by grouping your foods or understanding the different groups of foods that there are and putting them together. And again, this is why I say recipes are tools that help you put either the individual pieces together or everything together, right? So we have our protein, we have our produce, we have our pantry items, or let me break it down a little more. We have our protein, we have our veggies, and our fruits. That's your produce. And then you have your carbohydrates, which can come from pantry staples like rice and beans, or can come from your produce as well, like sweet potatoes. And then we have our healthy fats. So if we have protein, fruits and vegetables, carbohydrates, and healthy fats on a plate, or if we build our meals with those 4 things in mind, and then I like to add the 5th thing of something yummy, either through flavor or texture, that's going to enhance that bowl or that meal even better. So if we put those things together, that is what building a meal looks like. And if you take that through, it doesn't matter what kind of food you have available, if you can kind of complete that circle or complete that, I don't know, plate, pie, call it whatever you want, but if you can put that together, then you are more or less building your meals, which is why I say recipes are tools that will help you build meals. So a recipe, you can get a recipe for making jerk chicken, you can get a recipe for making seasoned rice, you get a recipe for making maybe a 1-pot pilau. And this is why I say tools fall short, because they only show you how. They don't consider what you have to make a particular thing. So you use a recipe when you already have an idea of what it is that you want, because you've identified what you have. Or if you work it the other way, where you look at a recipe and that determines what you need in order to put it together. I'm working from the perspective of, based on what I already have, how do I build meals? And that's the whole purpose of my meal building process that I keep talking about and harping about. I will never stop harping about it, because like I said, if what you're trying to do is eat better, you and I will have different goals for that. And whether my eat better goal is to make sure I have enough protein and fiber, versus somebody who is trying to, let's say, lose weight, and that's not something I want to necessarily harp on, but let's just say that because it's a very real thing, and somebody's trying to lose weight, and regardless of those 2 goals, we still have to build meals, and recipes don't necessarily aid that goal, or recipes are tools that can aid that goal. But again, recipes don't make the decision for you on what those meals are. You have to. And if you know that you can put some protein, put some carbs, put some veggies and some healthy fats together, whether it is I'm trying to make sure I have more protein and fiber, or you're trying to make sure that you're only having certain types of carbs and certain types of protein, it does not matter. We're both building meals. So that is the premise of me saying you don't need more recipes to eat better. What you need is an understanding of how to build your meals. And this is why collecting recipes won't necessarily get you there. Again, I want to make it clear that I'm not harping on recipes as far as me not liking recipes. I love recipes. I have cookbooks. I have recipes that I will use over and over again, but that's because I already know what I have. I already know what I like, and therefore the recipes are taking me out of having to figure it out sometimes. Let me share my own experience with recipes. I use recipes sometimes when I don't want to think about how to put this together. I use a recipe because it takes me out of that and it puts me in a creative space where I learn a new technique, or I learn how to flavor something differently from what I am accustomed to, because I might use the same seasoning all the time, or I might have the same process or the same method of cooking every single time I'm making a particular thing. So a recipe will help me step out of that, but that's because I already know what it is that I want to create. And so for you, if what you are trying to do is nourish yourself a little more, learning to build your meals will get you much further than solely relying on recipes. Use recipes as a tool to learn. Use recipes as a tool to get better. But the practice of building your meals relies on you knowing what you have, and that if you can put them together in a particular way, you have more or less solved the problem. So now that you understand what recipes or where they fall short, or put differently, where they won't help you, what you need to know next is sometimes, even with all of that, even though you know how to cook, sometimes you don't want to. Or when cooking sometimes feel hard, even though you know how to cook. That is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. Now that we know where recipes fall short, or now that we understand how recipes in and of themselves won't get you to nourishing yourself better or eating better. And even when you understand this meal building process, you still might run into the issue of being frustrated with cooking, even though you know how to cook. So come back tomorrow and we will talk about it.